we are gathered here today to bid farewell to the comedy review. He had a good life, an adventurous life, dodging Team LH and Russian nerve agents, accidentally calling terminally ill children inbred that one time, but the bite of Formula One's definition of fair use was just too strong. He was only 5 years old, meaning we at least beat Madeleine McCann. But all good things must eventually come to an end. Yeah, you didn't think I was really gone, did you?
Man, I am fucking shitting myself.
It's been a long summer break, and nice to be involved in YouTube drama for once. Now I'm kidding, it was fucking shit. But the comedy review is back, without any race footage. Still not quite sure how I'm going to go about that, but I'm sure I've thought of something by the edit. I know I've said this already, but before we begin, I just want to say a huge shout out to everyone who messaged, everyone who got in touch with advice, everyone who has supported the channel either through membership, super chats or Patreon. It really did mean a lot in what's been a rather stressful few weeks. And to all the haters on Reddit, I hope you get hit by a truck. The Dutch Grand Prix is next, so let's get into the comedy review. It's the Oh, I've already said that bit. Shit. We've had several weeks off, so let's begin by covering the news. And where better to start than the big story of the weekend, an FP1 video aged well for once. Alpine announced that after 2 years, it was finally able to sign an Australian reserve driver. As Jack Doohan was confirmed in the lineup from 2025, the reveal made at 5 PM in Kangaroo Land, so likelihood is their new signing was awake this time. We also finally got to know where Carlos Sainz is going next year. James Vowles' sex dungeon. His last visit apparently didn't go very well. The Spaniard has put pen to paper with Williams for 2025, which means Logan Sargent is now out of Formula One. News so obvious the team didn't even bother to officially announce it. That leaves just 3 seats open on the grid for next year, though Lewis Hamilton's spot at Mercedes is likely to be confirmed in a week's time. Kimi Antonelli getting an FP1 outing at his home Grand Prix in Italy, and also pretty much confirming the news to journalists already. He said, quote, "Replacing an 8-time champion won't be easy, but I'm ready for the challenge." Very bold thing to say in the Netherlands, let's just wait and see if he survives this weekend. I should probably cover the news in the wake of the Belgian Grand Prix as well. George Russell crossed the line in P1 following a rather audacious one-stop strategy, before having this to say in the post-race press conference.
But I was still questioning why nobody else did it. I thought I must be missing something here because...
Yes, George, you were missing 1.5 kilograms. Russell was disqualified, promoting Lewis Hamilton to the top step of the podium. And I also hear Toto Wolff has written Kimi Antonelli's contract using the entrails of the Mercedes engineer who made the error. Finally, in a rather packed news segment this week, Helmut Marko has been allowed to talk to the media again. The once key decision maker at Red Bull still thinking he can influence their driver decision if he sits outside Milton Keynes with a megaphone. Mark was told Austrian media that reserve driver Liam Lawson will be sat in a Red Bull car in 2025. Whether that means this, or this, or this, we're yet to confirm. This decision would have been made far easier if you just euthanized Perez after Belgium, wouldn't it? The Mexican was permitted to keep his drive for now and proceeded to show the team just how thankful he was during FP1. He finished 12th. The FIA have officially banned asymmetric braking systems from this race onwards, despite clarifying that they didn't believe any team were currently using it, which is pretty much code for "we found someone using it." It would of course be an opportunity then for the technically minded people of Twitter to blame this then when Verstappen went for a spin in the opening half of the session. If you ask me, he was just saying hello to the home fans at the chicane. God's piss would very much be in the air as the drivers hit the circuit, or the gravel traps if your name is Nico Hulkenberg. And with that, I think it's time for a house watch. You have dry lines, wet lines, and German lines, which at least aren't as bad as they were in 1939. The Hulk show was struggling in the opening minutes of the session, but quite frankly that was the least of Haas's worries, as this guy was back, and this isn't clickbait this time. Uralkali, the Russian sponsor who backed the team in the Mazepin year, have been fighting for the return of funds from the 2022 season, which, if you remember, saw their partnership scrapped after Putin's little Ukrainian holiday got a little bit out of hand. The Mazepins, therefore, attempted to seize the team's assets in Zandvoort, with Dutch police and bailiffs allowing the team to race, though banning them from leaving the country until a payment's been made. Being trapped in and amongst the Orange Army sure is a frightening prospect, probably more scary than the Mazepins actually. Maybe Hulk's actions in FP1 was simply an attempt to remind Uralkali how the team are. Let's get back to that FP1 session then, and it would be Lando Norris who ended it at the top of the timing screens. Verstappen and Hamilton making up the top three, and we won't speak about Ricciardo's performance. On to FP2. Sergio Perez would start the session hoping to improve on his off in FP1. That could be easily blamed on the wet conditions in that session, but the Mexican was quick to show us he could do it in the dry as well. Hulkenberg, meanwhile, was still on a mission to destroy as many of Haas's assets as possible, rear-ending into the barrier at turn 1 and bringing out one of these. When the session resumed, it would be Mercedes and George Russell on top 4, while Verstappen's true pace continued to be a mystery, the Dutchman down in P5 come the end of the hour. It was also revealed that he'd held summer talks with the Silver Arrows during the break, where he told Toto Wolff definitively that he wouldn't be driving for the team in 2025, and that he'd put out a restraining order on it. Traffic was also becoming a problem in the second half of the session, both on track and in the pit lane. Ricciardo had a close call with Slow, whilst Albon almost did us all a favour, nearly wiping Stroll out of the equation. Carlos Sainz wouldn't get to enjoy any of that, however, his gearbox giving up all remaining hope early on, probably still depressed at the news Bono wouldn't be coming to Ferrari next season. That would bring an end to Friday's affairs and take us on to a similarly soaked Saturday morning. Logan Sargent came out firing in FP3, setting a lap time good enough for 5th in the opening stages. Now, if a driver wanted to keep hold of that, he might say, keep setting decent lap times as the circuit dries and improves. Not Captain America here, however. Sargent transformed the run out of turn 3 into a life-size pinball machine, wrecking what was once his Williams, which soon put the cherry on top by identifying as a Spanish McLaren motorhome. It also means we need another one of these. With Zandvoort resembling a torched Hamas hideout more than it did a racetrack, the red flag was out for a considerable length of time, the circuit only going green again with enough time left on the clock for a single lap at the end of the session. That brought its own set of controversies, as Max Verstappen clearly wanted to get close to his friend Lewis, even if that meant breaking the rules to do so, and the session ending with a victory for the French. Pierre Gasly was on top then as we moved on to qualifying, a session I have to admit I missed because I paid a visit to the F1 exhibition in London on Saturday afternoon. And before you ask, F1 didn't give me a press pass, and I'll be honest, I can't think at all why. In all seriousness though, the exhibition was absolutely phenomenal. I particularly enjoyed the part at the end where they trigger #TeamLH by playing the live telemetry from Abu Dhabi 2021. As for qualifying, Q1 would see Daniel Ricciardo eliminated as he was struggling with car balance, and that's going to be the copium for me today. On the bright side, unlike me, he still has 2 functional wrists. I did this in the gym, but for some reason no one believes that. Ricciardo would join Sargent on the sidelines after the Williams team were unable to repair his car for the afternoon session. Not sure if that was due to the time constraints, or they just didn't want to risk putting the Avenger back out there again. Sergio Perez appeared to be another name at risk, blaming his need to use another set of tyres on Lewis Hamilton. The Briton was later given a 3-place grid penalty for blocking the Mexican, though I'm not quite sure where you expect him to get out of the way here. Sorry Lewis, we think Checo's on the fast lap. Well, he might be, it's hard to tell these days. Anyway, do you mind gracefully clipping into the wall so we can go by please? Cheers. Hamilton would have his own set of problems come Q2, when the Mexican Minister of Mid surprised by transferring to the top 10 shootout, leaving #washed in the drop zone, and Carlos Sainz also preparing for his switch to Williams by failing to make the cut as well. I say that, though Alex Albon had managed to progress. Oh, never mind, I'll go f*** myself then. Q3 would therefore see all eyes on Max Verstappen, the Dutchman aiming to make it 4 poles in a row at his home Grand Prix. The pair of McLarens weren't going to back down, however, and Lando Norris comfortably usurped his streaming buddy to take top spot for Sunday's Grand Prix. Oscar Piastri would attempt to make it a McLaren 1-2, though had to settle for 3rd, and Perez improved only to be half a second off his teammates as he lined up in 5th. Now on to Sunday. The Dutch Grand Prix features one of the shortest runs down to turn 1. Yet despite that, Lando Norris was still able to lose places on the start, Verstappen sailing on by while Piastri also fell back into 4th. As usual with Zandvoort, we spent the early stages of the race playing Hunt the Overtake, Carlos Sainz making a particularly daring move on Pierre Gasly, while Hamilton took advantage of the fact Hülkenberg is still scared of his own brakes to slip by into 11th. As the Silver Arrow continued to cut his way through the field, Lando Norris had finally remembered how to drive again. Plus, Verstappen was entering that stage of an F1 race where he begins to make up problems to with us. McLaren did have pace though, and Norris was able to slot one down the inside of Verstappen on lap 18. Hats off to these two for making an overtake without creating a terror incident in the process. After this, Verstappen's pace pulled a Jay Slater. It vanished and jumped off a cliff, triggering the Dutchman to pit, though any hopes of an undercut were now well and truly out of the picture. Pierre Gasly was also in a hurry, which makes little sense given he was 12th, in doing so sending one of his engineers to join me in the lack of a functioning wrist club. Over at Aston Martin, Lance Stroll was quick in the pit lane, and that was a 5-second penalty. If you haven't been able to gather yet, there was more going on inside Charles Leclerc's head than there was out at the front. That said, Piastri was now on the move, getting past Russell as the McLaren man aimed for a 1-2 to top off the weekend. Just down the road in Perez land, the Mexican was about to drop down into 7th place. The fact this is still a good race for his standards shows just how smart a move it was to retain him for the second half of the season. How about a bit of actual racing then? Here's 5 cars going at it and somehow not coming to contact. If you want to know why that's really impressive, just remember that both Kevin Magnussen and Lance Stroll exist in this field. At the very front though, there was no catching Lando Norris. His start may have been slower than a Haas sponsorship payment, but he's redeemed himself and came across the line on lap 72 to take his second Grand Prix win. Gasly and Bottas rounding out the podium after the timing screen had some acid at the end there. I'm not going to sugarcoat this, there's contemporary art more interesting than this Grand Prix. Finding material out of this was like getting blood out of a stone, and at several points I felt rather tempted to use said stone to beat myself to death with. That is what happens when you have Daniel Ricciardo's onboard on your second monitor, however. Verstappen's Dutch streak has been broken, and Norris edges that little bit closer in the championship, though realistically we're looking at the constructors here, and McLaren have taken another chunk out of Red Bull's tally. We're at least set up for a fantastic final 9 rounds of the season, and the comedy review will cover as many of those as possible before FOM decide I can't even use pictures anymore. You probably noticed I'm in the process of re-editing and re-uploading all of the older comedy reviews from this season, so a big thank you for all the support on that, and in the meantime, if you want some coverage on a race that was actually interesting, you can watch this video on the first and only 2-seater Grand Prix, where Alonso mounts Nigel Mansell, and if you want to find out how that porn film ends, then you can click on the card on screen or the link in the description below. Let me know what you thought of the race in the comments and on the poll over on my community page, and as always, a big thank you to the patrons who get previews and the uncensored version of this video. If you'd like to be a part of that, then head over to the links in the description down below. I'll be back tomorrow with the IndyCar review from Portland, where somehow we have a ferret on pole, but until then, have a good one.